Okay, everyone, I would like to start now. So here we go. Good morning, all. Good morning, District Governor Lyle. Good morning, DGE Sonia, DGN Leslie, PDGs Milton and Wadi. I saw so far. I'm not sure if anybody else has come on since. Good morning, Assistant Governors, all presidents, fellow Rotarians. So we're here this morning to talk about the 10 million meal challenge, as most of you know now, having signed up and are here for it. I wonder, I was going to ask for a show of hands, but I wouldn't really be able to tell at the moment. But I'm hoping that most of you, if not all of you, have at least heard of this before or heard of it more recently, perhaps because there was mention in an article recently on our district website. So therefore, I would like to think that most of you would have some little bit of a background on what this is about, but I'm here to explain that in a bit more detail, as well as to delve into a little bit more about what it is and how it will impact all of us. Sean, if you're hearing me, I am not able to scroll to the next, to the first slide rather. Sorry. Great, thanks. I'm not sure if you did it or I did it, but let's work together if you don't mind. Okay, bonjour to my French Rotarian friends who I know, some of whom are on this call as well. Hello, Frank. I at least saw one person wave to me, that's Frank. Hey, Frank. Okay. Fellow Rotarians, this initiative of Feed 10 Million was started in our Zone 34 as a cooperation between Zone 33 and 34. As you well know, they are our sister zone. As a means of trying to have a giant collective effort towards the intention of trying to feed hungry people around the world. Therein lies the major objective, which is how can Rotarians as individuals, in this case as clubs, as clusters, as districts, collaborate in an effective way to try to not only replicate projects that are being done elsewhere, but perhaps create new projects because of the differences in our geography and in our cultures to address the hunger problem in our immediate communities. Sean, next slide, please. So, great, thank you very much. All right, so just a little food for thought before we get going with respect to the issue of hunger and the area that we live. There's quite a bit of text on this particular slide, which I wouldn't read all of, but in essence, it speaks about the number of people that are projected in our area, which is Latin America and the Caribbean, that could experience severe food insecurity, especially since the pandemic has started. So one of the points that was made earlier in this article was the fact that there was already a serious alarm bell going on with regard to food insecurity in our area. And obviously with the onset of COVID and all the restrictions that we all have to adhere to, it's become an even bigger issue. I think many of us, by just reading the news and knowing what's going on around us, are well aware of perhaps not the detailed facts and figures or raw data with regard to how many more people are being affected, but I think it's fairly obvious from all of us within this region that more and more people are facing additional problems, particularly of putting food on the table. Now, the Economic Commission of Latin America also cautioned that people living in extreme poverty could increase significantly as well. And again, because of reasons of the restrictions with the pandemic and all the economic drama that is causing, it's additionally worrisome with respect to those that were living on the borderline of poverty that may now be sinking even further. And I think examples, as I said, I believe we all can imagine in our own minds with respect to our individual islands, countries, communities, in terms of how this problem is at the moment and how it has escalated, particularly over the course of the last year. International organizations under the United Nations umbrella, including the Food and Agriculture Organization, is giving us, is telling the world, indicating very dire warnings to to everybody around the world with regard to the crippling levels of food insecurity and what we should be trying to do about it. Now, when I say we here, obviously, I am speaking from the point of view that Rotary, as an international responsible organization, I believe has this cue is very obvious with regard to what role that we should be trying to play additionally in terms of the service that we give to our communities in the specific area of trying to address hunger issues. Sean, next slide, thanks. So I explained it's a zone initiative. This slide, while I speak about this part, is to simply remind everybody what we are as Rotarians and what our talent is, what our collective passion is, and in particular, the third line speaking about our power in our ability to combine our energy to attain a common goal. And you know, sometimes we get very tired of Rotary speak, in inverted commas. I think most of you know what I mean by that. But this statement is particularly applicable, obviously, because of what we're speaking about now, but also because it really does speak very much from the core of our organization with regard to putting our minds and passions together and combining our energy to attain a goal we have proven that we could do on many occasions in the past. So as I said, it's a zone initiative that began 2 years ago, whereby the idea was simply to ask districts and then to filter down to clubs to focus more of their projects, or more project time, I should say, towards an organized effort towards trying to alleviate hunger in our communities. You may have heard and you may have read, but I will also indicate that in the United States of America in particular, there are many organizations that focus on that totally, or focus on the collection of donations towards feeding people that are hungry, both in the States as well as in, you know, any other area of the world where hunger is a problem. In particular, zones 33 and 34 have concentrated on areas that take up our massive geographic area, which in particular has been Haiti getting a lot of attention, Latin American countries getting a lot of attention. But the US agencies I was referring to just now have given a lot of attention as well to African countries and other places in the world. Somebody needs to mute, please. I'm getting your radio in the background. Okay, thanks. Okay, so zones 33 and 34 had made a conscious decision, like I said, 2 years ago, to begin collaborating with the other agencies, it's particularly in the US, whose passion was food and food drives and food collection and food delivery and food service. Because they were experts in all of those areas, and they were the experts in the logistics pertaining to getting food out to hungry people in deserving countries. Zones 33, 34 as a zone, as a unit, decided to approach them to collaborate with different food bank initiatives. Some of those, again, in the same article that I was referring to that was on the website recently, I think it might still be there, referred to collaboration at the zone summits recently, whereby we literally had a food packaging event on the Saturday mornings of each of the end days of those summits recently, with the goal being to try to package 100 nutritious meal packets, 100,000 nutritious meal packets, which then the food service organization would be able to distribute to deserving places. On both occasions, we did it live. Obviously, that was 2019 2019 and 2018, which were very successful, and we were able to package those 100,000 meals towards this drive. But it's not just about food packaging, of course, which I'll go into in a minute, but I'm explaining how the whole initiative was born and what, from a zone perspective, at those 2 summits in the past, we have done to contribute to it. Obviously, this year, there not being a physical summit, just like how we've not had physical anything, of course, in the last few months in particular, it meant that the idea behind trying to encourage participation in the food drive would have to be, okay, got your message, Sean, would have to be filtered down in such a way that each club hopefully will be able to understand and harness the energy in their club towards doing something that was very specific. If you're not doing that already, doing something very specific towards a food drive or a food collection or a food distribution system. Next slide, please, Sean. Oh, is this the video? Okay, so we're going to show you. Yes, we'll show you a video now.
Where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. As the world's premier volunteer service organization, we will once again focus on supporting and caring for our neighbors by feeding at least 10 million meals during the upcoming Rotary year. Zone 33 and 34 Public Image Coordinator teams will manage this campaign, working with a District Feed 10 Million champion appointed by the District Governor. Our talent is service, our passion is doing good, and our power is in our ability to combine our energy to attain a common goal. Our focus will be on our service to our communities, and to focus on that, we have streamlined our reporting process. We will track our service hours, our financial contributions, and the number of meals provided by using the 4-way test as our guide. Serve meals at a local food kitchen. Deliver food through a backpack program. Participate in a meal packaging event to send food overseas, or provide funds where appropriate to collaborate with another organization. The possibilities are endless. With over 1,700 clubs across the zones, we have the capability to curb hunger in our communities. Together, we will feed 10 million.
Okay, thanks, Sean. You could go to the next slide. Great. Okay, so that was Rotary's video on the program. Some of you may have seen it before. So what we're going to speak about now is drilling that down further in terms of how does it work, and how does either the person who is responsible attending this this presentation today, or the president of their club, as the case may be, who has to take this initiative, hopefully, and this idea back to their club. I'm going to help you with step-by-step actions that you should take from this point on. The collaborative planning of meaningful projects that make a lasting impact to end hunger in our communities is the major message that you want to take back. In any avenue of service, something pertaining to food and feeding the hungry or feeding the less fortunate is either part and parcel of our regular club discussions or activities, or something that you can easily associate with any avenue of service within our clubs. And I think that I don't need to explain that further. I'm pretty sure that you understand what I mean. So for clubs who already have food drives or something that they do on a particular time of year or particular area of focus, is something, of course, that we would continue to encourage, except those clubs will now be asked to report it officially on Rotary Club Central as part of this 10 million meal initiative. What I mean by that is, if you currently do any kind of food service project, we are saying that that would be contributing towards our challenge, and therefore it should be appropriately recorded in the 10 million meal initiative as well, I'm asking. So For many of us in Trinidad and for many of us actually in the English-speaking Caribbean, as a matter of fact, I'm not being fair. For many of us during the Christmas season in particular, we do extra things. We do extra, we make extra effort towards projects that are synonymous with food, such as Christmas hampers, obviously, that we give to homes, we give to underprivileged people, we give to homes for the aged, etc. It's a very typical project of Rotary clubs throughout our district as well, and something, of course, that I would like to encourage us to do. But why this initiative is so different from that is that, A, while it incorporates that wonderful idea of giving additionally at the Christmas period in terms of hampers, etc., it is also asking us to look beyond that. It is something that has been talked about for a long, long time by many people that I know, which is, and I will say it in a very colloquial way, what happens after the hamper runs out after, a couple of days after Christmas? What happens to those very people that you have made an effort to go and see with a big smile, hand over a hamper, and know that you've fulfilled that very important part of our natural requirement for a little while, perhaps a week, maybe depending on your hamper, it could be 2 weeks. What happens after that? Part of this 10 million meal initiative is asking us at this very opportune time, which is just in the middle of the Christmas season, 2 weeks before Christmas. People are probably packing hampers left, right, and center, which is great. But we need to take to our club this message. I'm hoping that entwined with this wonderful gesture of giving out hampers at this time of the year, we must have a discussion, a very serious discussion, based on the guidelines provided by this 10 million meal initiative, I'm hoping, to discuss what we could do additionally thereafter. Meaning, I would like for us to start thinking about putting something in place that can start in January, being the first month of the second half of the year, which we have a lot of time to do and discuss right now, which could include what kind of excess you may have from your hamper drive that you could potentially do further with it come January, or what other ideas, we will get into many ideas in a minute, what other ideas we could potentially start or replicate, as I said, from other projects being done already, or brand new ideas that we could start looking at doing in our communities, which are a little bit different, as you know, obviously, from those in North America. So my singular focus with respect to this type of thinking is that we look beyond the traditional times where we might give one-off gift items as gifts, such as Christmas and in some places Easter time. In other places I know, like in Trinidad, for example, where we celebrate the Hindu community, we celebrate Diwali, and we celebrate Eid in the Muslim community as well. And I know that you have such communities in your islands as well, but you may not have national holidays as such. We do, and we additionally extend these kind of food type projects to earmark those particular days. But what Rotary is asking us to do, and what the 10 million initiative is asking us to do, is to think beyond, and in addition to those times when obviously people are not only grateful or hungry at Christmas, they're not only grateful or hungry at Easter, they're not only grateful or hungry at Diwali. They are hungry, certainly, all the time, and they are grateful whenever they can get, thank you, whenever they can get help that we provide. Sorry, I was distracted for a second there, pardon me. Sean, okay, next slide, please. Okay, so before I go into ideas and what I know has been done and what I could suggest strongly that we could all immediately adopt, I just wanted to say that part of the program includes responsibilities of the club, which is mainly about the reporting function, which I had just started to touch on. So The idea would be that we would provide information, which, as you know, Rotary International has become very much more pronounced about its data gathering capability in terms of trying to accumulate information that would be more meaningful in terms of when we're trying to express what kind of service quality we give from our clubs to our communities throughout the world. Rotary Club Central is something I think everybody in this audience is familiar with and knows about, and therefore our service hours, our financial input into these projects, and of course the number of meals that we eventually are able to provide is simply the kind of information that they would like to capture, that I am asking you if you could either send a report to me on or to the appropriate page on Rotary Club Central, just simply to capture all this effort that we are going to make additionally. In addition to the raw data of quantum of food, a number of people that we probably fed, they would also like to see, just like in any other Rotary project, appropriate photos, etc., to capture as well. Okay, next slide, Sean. I should have mentioned at the beginning, sorry, and it just occurred to me that as I was the champion of the food drive, of the food packaging initiative at the last 2 zone summits, DG Lyle asked me to continue the same effort, which is where the district Feed 10 Million champion title came from. So that's what I am also being called. My responsibility really is to disseminate, like what I'm doing now, what this is about and how we should get involved, rather than trying to tell you or be project managing your individual projects, but really it's more about the encouragement of trying to do something on a more recurring basis that we may not be doing now. So this initiative is meant to be scaled by clubs, and that means for the most part, especially in our communities, our smaller island communities, this is another type of initiative that I see as being something that could easily become, and should probably become, a multiple or a joint club effort. And I'm not saying that it must, obviously, I'm just saying it's one of those projects that could easily become joint projects because of the fact that obviously the advantage of the joint effort, the advantage of the ability of each club being able to put up a certain quantum of money would collectively, should 3 or 4 or more clubs put up the same amount of money, actually extend and create more value than if one club tried to approach it on their own. There are clubs that have already started. Many clubs, as a matter of fact, that I know have in their DNA these type of projects on an ongoing basis. And there are other clubs like mine, who I am going to speak about, that has been around for 57 years, has done many of these type of food projects in the past, but did not have really and truly a recurring type project like what I'm trying to encourage all of you to do now. Throughout the course of the year, as I said earlier, obviously, because these people that are really in a bad way are not just in a bad way in December. They are, for the most part, in a bad way all the time. And I would really like to appeal to everybody on this call to give some time and attention, and maybe even some solitude and introspection when it comes to this, from the point of view of what you share in terms of the smiles and the happiness and the grateful looks on these people's faces, the ones who you know when you go into their home that is something that is so decrepit and ready to fall apart, etc. We all, as Rotarians, I'm pretty sure, have been in that type of environment to try to see what we could do for these people. But again, for the most part, and it's not an accusation, it's a statement of fact, that most of us really only do it on those occasions, particularly the Christmas time. We don't particularly, I'm not saying all, but most of us don't have what I would call an ongoing, recurring type food service project that I feel very strongly we must get into. Going back to the example of my club, What I had asked my club to do, and they have certainly fell in completely supportive of this, is to start ever since September, I believe we started. What we did was, and again, we'll get into more specific project ideas shortly, but what we did was we sort of adopted a homeless shelter in our hometown of San Fernando. This homeless shelter feeds 30 to 40 people that are otherwise street people every single day, a lunch and a dinner. So as our initiative towards, or as a contribution towards this initiative, what our club has made a commitment to do is to feed all of the people in the shelter, both the transients in the evening as well as those who stay there during the day, 2 meals every fortnight as an initial commitment until such time that we are able to increase that. The idea being that we are going to liaise with other organizations, knowing that others help as well, but we're going to liaise with other organizations, and in particular, the other Rotary clubs in San Fernando, to see if we could collaborate on doing something similar to that, whereby if we could, quote unquote, take care of or handle or satisfy 4 to 5 days per week of the meal requirements of this one home, we would have made a huge difference towards the monetary impact, the stress levels of both the people who are trying to run the home, as well as the people, of course, who go there looking for a meal, to a huge extent. San Fernando is a fairly small city that has a homeless street dweller problem, just like many of you have in your towns as well. I don't think there are any towns that don't have this problem. It's just probably at a different scale in different places. But the thing about this, in collaboration with speaking with the mayor of the town, the idea is that it's making a different impact from the point of view of, we're not taking a box of food and giving it to the homeless street dweller who is lying down on the pavement in front of somebody's business place or in front of somebody's home. Because the message that you're sending is kind of twofold in that situation. The message you're sending is, here I am with a Rotary shirt coming to try to help you by giving you a meal, but I'm also contributing in a negative way, if you think about it, about suggesting that you, as part of society and part of responsible society, don't have a problem with the person sleeping where they are, or taking up a space on the public space in that manner, which is really not the long-term intention. So the whole idea of this initiative was, we working in tandem with the city authorities, whereby we, in being able to provide the more surety of meals at the homeless shelter, would encourage the homeless persons to go to the shelter. And because the shelter is receiving help otherwise with regard to adding beds, adding capability, and so on, to house these people, that we are potentially contributing to that effort as well, to getting the homeless people to the shelter and off the streets, but also we are helping them to be fed, and hopefully at some stage in the future, we could help them with additional things like some kind of training programs that would be provided by other volunteers for various things, in terms of trying to see how we could help these people in a long-term way. The 10 million meal initiative, to me, is a stepping stone towards that, and towards helping our homeless and our transient person problem that we all have at a different scale in our societies by doing this as well. So going back to the point about the joint effort, I feel that if all clubs get on this initiative, then it will also make a lot of sense, especially in certain societies I could think of, like the much smaller islands, for example, with 2 or 3 clubs, or even in the case of Suriname with 3 clubs, but 3 large clubs that could have such a big impact throughout, not just Paramaribo, but outskirts as well, because obviously a lot of that problem will also exist on the outskirts. Guyana, I would say something very similarly with regard to not just Georgetown and environs, but outside of that as well. And so if we put our heads together and our collective effort together, I believe that what we could learn from what other districts and clubs have done within our zone thus far would be a very good model on which we could create projects of our own to create more sustainable feeding programs for people who are in need. Next slide, please, Sean. Okay, I touched on this already. Sorry, this slide should have been 2 slides before. Just to say that what you would be reporting, and it's very important to do the reporting part as well. I'm just going to spend 1 minute here saying, please include, I'm not going to pull up the reporting page as such, but it's easy to be found. And you're reporting the service hours that you've spent on this initiative, the financial contributions towards it, and the number of meals that you have provided. Next slide, please, Sean. Okay, so we're gonna just touch on now on a few project ideas. I mentioned about collaborating with other organizations. There will be many examples of that to follow, because I think that's probably one of the best ways to get this off the ground. There are simple ideas that your club or a collaboration of clubs in your area can do right away, which included the examples I gave just now. Adopt a homeless shelter, for example, adopt another home, not necessarily for homeless people, but another home that may have issues with budget with regard to providing food for their for the persons who live there or who depend on them. Arrange a food packaging event. I think that's an excellent idea too, although to the extent of what we did at the summit activities may not be feasible for us. I have since spoken to some of those very same organizations, Rise Against Hunger and Meals for Hope, for example, who are able and have made it clear to me that they, or I should say have convinced me that scaled down versions of that type of meal packaging event are things that we could do here ourselves, with the recipients being our own local people that need help. You know, one of the things that came out of when I was preparing for this was the fact that, apart from my own experience, it is, as I said, it's the time of the year when we're all talking about hampers and doing a lot of hamper drives and so on. It's also the time of the year when our eyes and our hearts hopefully get exposed to that, you know, that one-on-one interaction with people who are really catching their tail. And what has happened with me of late is, because of our collaboration, my club has a collaboration, you may have heard this since I was district governor, with a very big corporate sponsor, which we still have, fortunately, and which we're doing many big things with. For example, this year, the Little Rotary Club of San Fernando is packaging 1,000 hampers to give out during the course of the next 2 weeks. It's the size of a hamper drive that we've never done before. Obviously, we couldn't have done it without this major sponsor in tow. But I'm saying that because of the point about going out to different communities. I'm from San Fernando in Trinidad, but there are communities right in the back of Port of Spain, indeed in San Fernando, where it may be a place that you don't necessarily usually drive past or drive through, that you might visit when you're doing this hamper drive, that I'm hoping would inculcate this additional spirit in you, this additional drive in you to try to see what we could do on a more sustainable basis to help these people post their Christmas hamper. And it would also help from a public image point of view. I am very, 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 very sure about this from a public image perspective, the fact that you don't have people saying, I wonder if I should give you this example. I'll give you the example. This is an aside. My mother is 90 years old, and although she's very healthy and lives by herself and is in excellent condition, her children decided to try to encourage her to get a caregiver. So she complained for a long time, I'm fine, I don't need a caregiver, but then she agreed to have this caregiver. And the caregiver came from an area that's a pretty poor area in Trinidad. And when my mother introduced me as somebody who was in Rotary, she said, oh, we know Rotary. Rotary comes to us every single year at Christmas and brings hampers for people in our street. And then she stopped and she paused. And very interestingly, she looked at me and she said, but we don't see them until next year, December. Now, this really happened at my mother's house recently, but I am sure that everybody on this call would either have heard of something like that or experienced it themselves, because it's the truth. It's the truth. We do it once a year, they don't see us again. You know what? Let's change that image that people have out there of us with regard to being so gracious at Christmas to being gracious more often. It may not be for certain clubs the ability to do something every month, but if we could start by doing something every quarter, and then that could increase to every other month, perhaps, and or if we collaborate with others and could therefore volunteer more of our time and effort rather than money, which is scarce, towards collaborating with another organization who might have already been able to realize the food part contribution. Let's do that, please. So some of these ideas that I have shared with you here are pretty obvious ones. Sean, next slide, please. What I want to particularly encourage now is the part about the collaboration. So I'm afraid the slide is a tad bit fuzzy, at least on my end, Sean. I don't know if the others are too, but maybe from the recording of this session, you would have it in a clearer form, where we have identified in various countries in our own district organizations that we are already aware of that are either completely focused on food and feeding people programs, or already have a collaboration with various clubs doing these things. So I would like you, if you didn't know who the foundation in Aruba was, or if the Curacao folks did not know about the Aruba effort, or the French Guyana effort was different, or the organization has a different name there, for example. This is a guideline towards the organizations that are already doing this kind of thing, and the organizations that I would strongly suggest that we look towards a possible collaboration with, because they would already have their network of donors with regard to the role that they play on a more regular basis than we do. So I want to touch on the public image part again, just to say that, again, the collaboration effort is certainly going to contribute to the public image part. The persons who are in dire need themselves are the ones we also want to make a big splash to, with respect to the fact that when I shake your hand or give you a hug, as the case may be, or a bounce nowadays because of COVID, it doesn't mean that you're not going to see me again soon. You're going to see me again soon because I've collaborated with other clubs, or I've collaborated with one of these organizations to jointly brand ourselves in this effort, so that there's an understanding that Rotary has now taken a turn in its initiative and in its focus to try to help to feed people. It's such a basic human need that sometimes we overlook because of our own very fortunate circumstances, or that unfortunately with our blinders on, we only look at a certain time of year, that I really strongly want to get everybody to understand that they should not, and that we should do more in this area. So, fellow Rotarians, here we are at a very, I think it's a crossing point, so to speak, in terms of just about at the halfway line of this current Rotary year, a significant time in terms of giving and food stuff because it's Christmas, and a time to reflect, I'm hoping, when you're having your Christmas meal for those clubs who are meeting in person, or if you're having your virtual Christmas get together, make 2 minutes as you, in other words, I'm asking you who are attending and listening to me right now, you become your club champion immediately. In fact, if I had a wand to wave, I'll probably wave my wand and say, I hereby make you club champion. But the main story obviously being that I heard what was said in the presentation today. I think it's a good idea. I want us to get on board with it. No, all the members of my club weren't there to listen, but as the representative who attended, I want to consider myself as the champion of this idea. And this is a time when, give me 2 minutes to speak about it at my Christmas get-together meal, so that it makes everybody conscious of it at the time when we are having our luscious ham and turkey and pastels. The people are going to be hungry. not even a few days after we have just gone and handed them their hamper. January will come and they'll be hungry again. Let's think that way, please. And by extension, let's create projects that we could literally start next month, just like my club did on a whim in September. When I spoke about it at the end of August, we literally started in September and have done it ever since then, including a grand Christmas meal that we are doing this Thursday for the same homeless center. So it's something that does not take a lot of effort, in my opinion, to get off the ground. But I am, again, appealing to you who are on this call today to take this message to your club event. It's not about trying to tarnish the spirit of your own club dinner. In fact, it's supposed to make Rotarians understand and open their eyes even wider to the facts that remain with respect to the poverty in our own surrounding communities that we need to make a bigger effort towards addressing. And I'm hoping that you understand, I'm hoping that you agree, and I'm hoping that you would be equally enthusiastic to start a program in your own club or collaborate with other clubs or collaborate with organizations like the ones on this list or others in your community that I might not be aware of in order to start making a more sustained, recurring effort towards feeding as many people as we can and achieving that goal within our zone of preparing and or supplying 10 million meals. The idea, by the way, just to end off that part, is the fact that Zone 33 and 34, which our district governor speaks about from time to time, I'm sure he certainly did when he visited our club, has an excellent reputation in many ways around the globe, from the point of view that we lead statistics in various ways as against other clubs. Some of them include membership, some of them include bringing on new members, some of them include the 10 million meal initiative. There are other things that our zones, which is great for us, of course, being part of 33, 34, are very active in and are world leaders in, that we would like to continue from the point of view of Rotary making such a big difference towards this initiative and hopefully getting the other zones to copycat our initiative as well. Obviously, by extension, we all know that the organization we belong to means that the more that this could be done in other areas of the world, the more we are all making a difference to humanity. So please accept my message, which was specifically done at this time of the year because of the point that I made just now about it's time for our eyes to open further than just the Christmas season. And it's well enough in terms of time for you to put something together to get a project off the ground, hopefully starting sooner rather than later. So that is the end of the formal presentation. I will be open to questions now, which Sean, you will manage with respect to opening people's microphones. I don't know if I could invite, if he would like, the district governor to say anything first. Sean, could you unmute? Okay.
Right. I was having a little difficulty getting unmuted there. I was listening very intently, Roger. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you. The one thing I will say is that we are also, through Healthy Caribbean Coalition and our Childhood Obesity Committee, we are also looking at planting food, teaching people to plant food. We are partnering with Food Plant Solutions, who specialize in creating seeds that can grow in various parts of the world. So not only the feeding, but also teaching people to grow. I listened to the executive director of the World Food Program on BBC a couple of days ago, and he has been saying he said exactly what I've been saying here. We are heading for famine. We are heading for a lack of food in our countries that is unprecedented, brought on by the pandemic. So Roger, you're on the money. I think, we can't wait for the food to grow. We have to start both initiatives at the same time. We are in trouble as far as our communities go with hunger. They call it food insecurity, but let's face it, it's hunger. So this is a great initiative. I could talk a lot, you know I can talk a lot, but I'll be quiet. This is your show. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you so much, DG Lyle. You know, and I think that people who are, you know, usually up to date with the news can't help but help from various quarters, these kind of warnings that we have been getting of late. So Lyle, thanks for that contribution. The thing about this that I didn't announce, it was something that I was going to make a request for, was to have, I'll say it now, however, is to have a follow-up presentation done in January. And the purpose of that presentation that I was going to do in January was exactly, Lyle, without collaborating with you, exactly that thought. Now, I mentioned about a project that our club is doing with our major sponsor that not only includes the hampers that I just referred to, but it actually includes what they call a grow box. That's what we're calling it here in Trinidad, a grow box initiative, which is basically teaching people to start becoming self-sufficient by having small home gardens. And we are actually working with our major sponsor to try to introduce this to one single community as a pilot project. I say one community, meaning hundreds of people, but just one specific geographic area of Trinidad that is called Moruga, which is also a very low-income area in Trinidad, to align, or not to align, to include the idea and tools and guidelines and advice with regard to encouraging people to start to grow certain staples. So much so that I see my president on, I didn't realize she was here before. So much so that when we spoke, I think it was only Thursday at meeting, we were talking about how we were going to propose the rollout of this program so that we could get others involved as soon as possible. And alongside that, teach these people not only about growing a home garden, but about how they could potentially form a cooperative, how they could even have different gardens in different areas of the community so that they could have a bartering program, potentially work within their own community. Tomatoes grow good by me, peppers grow good by you. I mean, it sounds, you know, I see Conrad smile a bit there because it sounds, you know, nice, but I don't know, can it work? And we're saying we want to take that chance. We want to take that chance because we have found a community that seems to be people who are very keen to try to help themselves, which is something maybe you should try to find first, if you know what I mean, you know, because trying to help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves is like knocking your head against a brick wall. We know that. We've seen that before too. So find a community that's keen to, find a community that's open arms to your help. The same community that you've given a hamper to at Christmas, and the same community that you've come back to in January saying, let me help you start to grow your own food as well. The same community, in our case anyway, that we're going to try to help bring internet connectivity to them so that their children could actually connect to the internet so they could do their schoolwork, and so on and so on. I'm getting a little bit into our project, but I'm just saying we could connect these things in such a way that the overall effort is community development. But we are attacking the problems in different focal areas. The one I spoke about today is food security. There are other things that we could do as we go along. Rotary clubs don't need to think about projects, you know. There are so many projects right in front of our face. We just don't have enough resources to address all of them at the same time. And that's why sometimes we need something like this to talk about a particular area, a particular focal point, give attention to it. And when the people are both getting help as well as helping themselves, we could start looking at other things to potentially do, whether that's via advice or via training or via whatever. Our goal should always be not a one-stop thing, not a one-off thing. Our goal should always be, I want to give you a hamper at Christmas time this year because I want you to be off of my list of people who need a hamper next year. That should be our goal. What can we do between now and then to have that family get off that list so I could go to another family that's really needy? In other words, what other things am I able to do between now and then? And you know what? People will say, Rotary are volunteers, we have jobs, we have lives, we have other things to do. Yes, but if we just collaborate a little bit more in specific focal areas, one being a stepping stone to helping the people to get to another point. And then when we are able to address that, whether collaborative effort, their own effort, or they're being developed to such an extent now that there's a certain area of their life that they don't need to give so much attention to, that now they can give attention to something else. That's our job, as far as I'm concerned. That's Rotary's job. We are way too intelligent and we have way too much intelligent resources to only be able to come up with the solution being, let's collect some money, let's buy a hamper, and let's give it to some poor people. And then in January, we'll do something else. Let's put that collective intellect together to try to, when we say community development, we probably need to talk a little bit more in our own clubs about what does development mean. And I don't have to explain it, but I will simply say that development means getting from one point to another. Progressing from one point to another. That's what development means. And so when we're having our Rotary meetings and we're talking about our next term project or our usual project in the second half of the new year, whatever that might be, add in the food program, please, as something additionally to be done. And just to make the point finally about the development part of it, make that part of your discussion that is something that is ongoing towards getting these people the help that is not just a handout, because we all know that the handout mentality would last for the rest of your life. And that the handout mentality is a result of two things, just like a bribe. The handout mentality is a result of two things, just like a bribe. With a bribe, somebody has to offer it, and the other person has to want to accept it. The handout mentality is, if I as a Rotarian continue to think the only way we can help people is we gather up some hampers and we go give it to them one day and we've done our job. And the people who are receiving it think, all right, the only thing for me in this life is when the next organization coming to bring a hamper for me. There is no development in that. There is no development in that. We are perpetuating that same level that those people will be at by simply doing that handout, shake your hand, goodbye. We are part of the problem. I think we need to start thinking a little bit ahead of that. So we need to start thinking about how can we become the longer term solution. I'm not saying we have all the money in the world. I'm not saying we have all the resources in the world. I'm not saying all of a sudden we can adopt a community tomorrow and feed them every day. I'm not saying that. It's a process that we should be thinking about as time elapses, just like any other plan, just like our strategic plan. We want to get to that place by doing such and such. It's the same way we should be thinking about our developmental projects so that they develop over time, not same old, same old. So take that message back to your clubs, please, I'm asking, and let's try to think about doing this at a level where, just like in our businesses, we think about what we want to achieve by next year, mid-year. We want to get our extension to our building done. We want to get that new piece of equipment in. We want to hire those 2 new people that we were thinking about. We want to buy another van. Same thing. Why don't we do that in our Rotary clubs? So to me, when we tout community development, we tout in, and we need to be part of the difference, people. We need to be part of that change in mentality that takes place, whereby when we say development, we mean trying to help take people from one level to a better level. Sorry, I went on a bit long there, but any other questions? Sonia, I think you want to say something.
PDG Roger, excellent presentation as usual. This initiative is definitely one that we can take in the district and make a difference. It would be for us to, as you say, be sustainable in what we do. Start out small, because of course at this time, COVID time, funds are short, small, but start small and expand. It is something that, and it's easy. Our Rotary Club does it every month. We feed every month, and through that feeding, we hope that some of those people will, because of the nourishment of the food, get themselves together and be able to look for a job, move to the next level. So I don't think it's a hard thing to ask if everybody puts a little plan in place. But unfortunately, today, with few people on the call, how do we get the word out there? I'm sitting here, driving, and when I stop, I send messages to different people, but we need to get it out there to the clubs, because I couldn't agree more. This is definitely an important initiative. I am driving and the police can soon lock me up, so I'm gonna come off now and wish everybody a good rest of the day. Happy Christmas, drink responsibly, and I will listen to the rest of the comments.
Thanks, Sonia. Thanks. Yeah, the point Sonia made about getting this out to all of the other clubs, I guess, is I can talk to Sean Paddy and the DG afterwards with regard to maybe using excerpts from this recording, for example, to encourage clubs to show at their next club meeting or a club meeting. The AGs who are online, I'm hoping could obviously use their influence to project this message to the clubs in their clusters. You know, and whatever other ideas maybe Sean Paddy and others might have with regard to disseminating this, or perhaps it will be heard of, and if and when we have a follow-up one in January, if I'm allowed the slot, could, you know, hopefully get a bigger audience and re-encourage everything that I said before with regard to the food part in particular. I want to invite, I'm not sure if he wants to, but Conrad, did you want to say something earlier?
I didn't have a speaking part in this presentation, PDG Roger. I was just smiling because, like so many clubs, we do similar projects anyway in St. Lucia, but we also very often only do only a big Christmas feeding and then 4 times a year a lunch in the town hall. And our president this year has more energy than most of us members, so he has done all kinds of other initiatives, and we are still before Christmas in the process of implementing a community garden and some fruit tree planting in a community that's fairly close to Castries. And it's one of these where they are probably as much organized as Rotary is. The whole community is very together. So it was a natural. And since we couldn't do our regular annual tree planting, where we usually plant 1,000 trees in landslide prone areas, we had to find a different project. And so we work with the Ministry of Agriculture. They give us the trees for free because it's Rotary. And then we go out with community members and we try to plant them. Most of them survive, right? The thing is, in this case, it's probably a good start because the community really came to us and said, let's do something together. It's not one of these projects where we bestow something on a community, right? Without that they asked for it. So we're fairly confident that this one will work, and we plan on doing more with them. That's why I was smiling when you called me out there when you do your presentation. And I'm sure all the people that are listening have similar projects. You know, we just never really recorded the hours or tried to get any mileage for it.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Conrad. So yeah, and I mean, the mileage part, I think, you know, the way that we think now in Rotary is that we must try to also extract as much mileage and public image help as possible when we are doing these things. So the capturing of the data by Rotary Club Central is about a more data-driven exercise, but the public image part, certainly we also, as I mentioned with the example that I gave, just the fact that there is a whole community down in the area of Woodland in South Trinidad that thinks Rotarians are great only in December. Well, I'm just as a small example. But capturing the data is important. The public image part is important, yes. But, I've noticed already that there are people on this call, either by the comments that they have made or by in the chat box or comments that they've made thus far, that already have an interest in doing food type projects or already doing food type projects. So the message that was given earlier from Sonia about getting it out there is that we need to get this to the clubs and to the presidents who may not have a food type project to get off the ground as a result. One of the other things in our club that I will tout as well is the fact that we have been, well, we've done this in the past, but with the current president, we have also been giving more attention to helping schools, painting schools, this whole device drive, et cetera, But part of what we are doing in the next school that we're going to help, as a matter of fact, is the starting of a garden in the school, because the school has a big area in the back that's not being used. So that whole thing, that whole grow box idea, plant your home garden thing, I know has been tried in the past, but I think that it may not, the places where it has been unsuccessful is because it wasn't properly managed or it wasn't started off properly in the first place. And that's a lesson to learn from, as far as I'm concerned, so that we do it differently the next time and it continues to be a success. I know of a few examples, well, where that led to something that was close to a cooperative, as I mentioned, type of arrangement in a certain small area, and it's actually working. They actually now are thinking, as a matter of fact, of becoming, like applying to become a full-fledged legal cooperative entity, interestingly enough, and talking about sharing of transportation to get goods to market and all that sort of thing. If we could be the drivers of such things in communities like that that need it more, and could, at the end of the day, not only feed themselves with regard to those particular things, but also, contribute to the market that we go to buy from as well. We've done something, like I said, we've done a developmental thing that I think that we could be proud of, and it raises Rotary's image while doing that as well. I have this personal, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it a mission, but perhaps it's a mission in terms of whenever I get a chance to speak about it, I would. But it's not like it's consuming my life. But it's a mission regarding the fact that I really feel strongly that Rotary, which has built itself up to the image that it currently has over 115 years, needs to leverage that much more than we do now. I also feel, which sounds like when I was district governor 3 years ago, sorry, but I also feel strongly that Rotarians need to understand that our Rotary brand is the most important brand, and is the brand that we should be collectively touting, rather than trying to always necessarily push our own club into the forefront. The same effort that we give in pushing our own individual club to the forefront, we could be using that effort collaboratively to just push that little logo up in the corner there that you're seeing. Because the more brand and positive brand recognition that logo has, we could have 10,000 more clubs next year to add to that. The Rotary Club of Timbuktu means nothing to me personally, to be honest, except that they're part of the Rotary organization and hopefully doing some good work down in Timbuktu. You know what I mean? But I hope you get my point, because I feel really that this type of thing like food drive, the initiative to do developmental things is much more about Rotary collaborative spirit, including those other organizations that I just mentioned, and in tune with the project that my club is doing now with our major sponsor. For example, my president Dina would have told you that at my presentation to the club on Thursday, it was made clear that the same amount of video, social media, newspaper, and TV coverage that they're going to give themselves, they're going to give to us as their partner. In other words, that's free media for all the good stuff that they're doing, that for all intents and purposes, they are paying for and we are doing on their behalf. But it's not going to be their logo alone, it's going to be the Rotary logo as well. That went off on a tangent just a little bit, but it was just to make the point that, you know, there's nothing wrong with collaboration, but we also have to take advantage of our brand to ensure that it gets its just due with regard to the amount of effort we as Rotarians are making. Any other questions? Bino, Bino, would you like to say a little bit more about that little comment you made in the chat box about what's going on there by you, what you guys do? Bino, you there? Bino from Aruba, right? Live or Curacao?
He probably doesn't recognize Dino. He's Benno.
Benno, sorry, Benno, are you there?
Curacao, Willemstad.
It's Curacao, right? Sorry. Okay. I kind of hope he's not hearing me now and hearing me call all the other islands except his. All right, perhaps he's off for a bit. Anyway, anybody else has a question? As we have such a small audience, I think we could maybe 5 more minutes if there's any more questions or comments. Stephen, you looked very interested, which I'm happy to see. So I don't think anybody else.
Hi, good morning, PDG. This is Dolores.
Oh, hello, Dolores. Yes. Go ahead.
I did put a question in the chat, but I am happy to know that as an NGO, the NGO that I'm representing here this morning, because I am not seeing another member from my club, but I'd like to start off by saying that the Rotary Club of St. Augustine West for the COVID period has distributed, I think it's 46 food hampers to the value of $300 TT to different organizations, including the Tunapuna Piaka Regional Corporation and the organization that I am with, which is Groots Trinidad and Tobago. We were able to further distribute those hampers to people, families of people living with HIV and AIDS. Our organization, which is Groots Trinidad and Tobago, I did ask the question, how can we partners, if we are allowed to partner with Rotary Club on this initiative, because this is something that we have been doing since the ending of March. As far back as the 30th of March, I wrote to my Rotary Club expressing that, you know, this is the way that the club should go in terms of assisting people during COVID. Of course, the request was not favorable, so I forged along with my club. We have since distributed between March and October over 6,000 cooked meals. We would source the ingredients, the food items, cook it here at the organization, and then go and do delivery. We do deliveries from Sealot all the way up to Dabadi to needy families, also some of those who are on the streets. We have people living on the streets, people living under bridges. It included in that 6,000 would have been donation that we got, and I'm especially calling out Rotary Club of Rotary Club of Port of Spain, because they were doing online, the meal that they would normally partake of during their meeting, they donated that twice to the cause that we were forging along with. Rotary Club of St. Augustine West has also, as I said, donated 14 hampers. It is interesting, though, that, you know, the DG spoke about the home garden, because only yesterday the organization wrote to Digicel requesting funding, because we have 2 transition homes that that house survivors of domestic and gender-based violence, people who are living with HIV, people who have mental health issue. And the proposal I put forward is to start a kitchen garden, because in 4 to 6 weeks, you can start reaping vegetables. I have done that from tires here on the compound that we are renting. So this is a very, very good initiative. And I really wish that, you know, other NGOs can get on board with it and not just Rotary clubs. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Dolores. That's excellent point. And I just wanted to touch quickly on, does anybody else have a
Yes,
question?
Roger, I also had a small remark in the chat box.
Oh,
That was about maybe it's an idea to connect this program with our peace area of focus. There is no peace if there is still hunger. Just a remark.
Most definitely so. And Stephen, what that describes is exactly what I went on to speak about a little bit more, about the fact that this approach, in my opinion, to adding this type of project to our agenda will have many different offshoot advantages, obviously, okay? That being one certainly included. The DG mentioned about the obesity initiative, which of course is so very closely aligned to this as well. Peace, very obviously, from the perspective of persons who are hungry will not be able to develop further, as I was alluding to, or get to that next level, is probably the best way I could describe it. And yes, I just feel strongly, you know, Stephen, that we are the people that have to send that kind of slightly different message to our quote unquote regular Rotarian fellows, meaning that, you know, they are good at heart and they are Rotarians at heart, but they may not be the most informed Rotarians. All right, so the difference between you and I and them is that we have the same heart, we have the same desire, but we're not as informed. So we are the ones that have to inform them of, you know, this new or newer, more modern approach, hopefully is what it could be described as, or a more all-encompassing approach to the development end goal that we should be trying to lead and not follow others. We should be taking the lead with, in my opinion, is what Rotarians should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So while it is good to also, you know, assemble to pack hampers and paint a building and other things where we contribute our personal sweat and time, nothing wrong with that, because I am a firm believer in leading by example as well. But it does not mean that that's the extent to which us as Rotarians can do projects. We can do so much more than that. And take the example, okay, I'm showing off a bit, but I have to make mention. Take the example of the major sponsor that my club has been so fortunate to acquire and keep since then. My message to everybody is not, ha ha ha, we have a major sponsor, so we get to do big projects. My message to everybody is, why can't other clubs do that too? Why can't other clubs get an entity like what we have that you build a relationship with over time? You focus your attention on building a relationship with them so that there's trust of each other, and there's trust in the reliability, etc., and the execution capability of your club. And when they are ready to do something on a larger scale, like what we are doing now with them, for this period, the single biggest, in terms of monetary value, project that any club in Trinidad has ever done, unless they show me evidence otherwise, we have just gotten a purchase order to our club from Shell International for $2.5 million to do a project that is encompassing training, development, electronic devices, internet access, community development in all kinds of ways. It's a really awesome project. My point about that is, I mean, thank God for that, obviously. But my point about that is, and I've said it before, as I think, Stephen, you've certainly heard me say, try to find a partner a partner with the same intent and a partner with a budget, obviously, right? And more than likely that might have to be an international company, but not necessarily, not necessarily. You have a conglomerate that operates, that is homegrown in Suriname, for example. Maybe somebody needs to go and visit them and talk about how you are here to help them with their CSR goals. That's what you're there for. You're not there for money. Well, you're certainly not saying that. But that will come should you be able to form a relationship and form a partnership. And you see that word, that English word that is now my best friend, partnership. All large corporate entities love to hear that word. That's the only word. They don't like to use the word sponsor. They don't like to use the word donate because there's a negative connotation to that. So you, with your brand, with your Rotary brand, you're walking in there like if you represent Rotary International. We are a worldwide, intelligent, respected corporate organization that you should be partnering with, that we could help you to raise your brand by doing all these types of community service and developmental projects. And by extension, your ideas will fuse with their ideas, and or their ideas will share with your ideas along aligning with Rotary ideals, and you can achieve so much. I strongly feel that because one of our major obstacles is money and finance, that if we could plug that particular hole in our resource planning area, there's so much more we could do.
Yeah.
Like what the current very small Rotary Club of San Fernando is doing right now, that's going to be a national level. Now there's that, and not everybody's going to have that good fortune, or not everybody's going to realize such a sponsor. I know that, I understand that. So I go back to where we were before, which is the fact that it does not mean, however, let me share a project with you that my club does. It's something we used to do in the past until bigger fundraisers overtook the time that it would take to arrange. And so we stopped doing it. And now because of COVID, we've started back doing it. I'm quoting Trinidad dollars here, right? You know what our club does? We have hired a caterer to make a meal, a lunch, for $20 or $30 or whatever it is. We then call on people who we know would like to have a lunch delivered to their office on a particular day. We call it businessman's lunch. All it means is on that day, your lunch will be delivered to you by a Rotarian. And we deliver the lunch to the person and we charge them $50. That's all we do. Every month we make several $1,000s doing just that. People like me, I don't mind telling you, people like me, I don't even deliver the lunches. My driver delivers the lunches and they know it came from Rotarian Roger. And we make thousands of dollars literally sitting down behind our computers and saying, hey, Conrad, how many tickets you want for Friday's businessman's lunch? Will your wife be joining you? Okay, that's 2 tickets. That's it. And no rocket science. But why I bring up that very simplistic example is because it does not necessarily take a lot of time and effort and money and lifting boxes, etc., or giving up your Saturdays or your Sundays to do Rotary work or to make a Rotary profit or to, you know what I mean? There are things that could be done fairly easily based on our network that are not only not time consuming, but easy to put money into the kitty. And you want to know what? Which the president could vouch for? What our businessman's lunch currently pays for the homeless shelter's food on a monthly basis. Imagine that. So literally we are doing something new from September to now that has not actually dug into our coffers because we added that fundraising aspect to it, which is now equating each other. Bam. As some young people would say. So, you know, sometimes we push ourselves in a corner in terms of the same people I was referring to just now, the good-hearted Rotarians, but the uninformed ones, because those are the ones that you might get resistance from. You know, why do I have to give up my Sunday to come and pack hampers? I'm already a Rotarian doing other things. There's a way that you could explain that. Additionally, there are ways that you could be doing Rotary work or making a Rotary effort literally during the time that you are doing other things at your said office or on an evening when you get home. There are things that we have to start doing from a more intellectual capacity level that could be beneficial to our club, and stop thinking about only those straightforward, one-off instant satisfaction things that a lot of our clubs do that are great for the instant satisfaction, but not so great for the what happens after. Anyway, I've gone somewhat over time. I don't know if anybody has another comment. I didn't want to feel like I'm keeping you, but
Roger.
I'm hoping that the message is understood and will be passed on.
Roger, Milton.
Sure.
If I may say, sorry, I was multitasking, but if I may say, you just mentioned the word partnerships. And I think that should be the DNA of any Rotary club. At the end of the day, Rotary has partnered for years in the fight for polio. The membership of our club is supposed to be a business. We're looking for business people. We expect, when we talk about diversity, we talk about this every year, that the members of the club should be able to form these linkages. We understand that every club will not be able to form the same linkages, but I think it's important as part of the DNA of a club that they should be able to do this for the betterment of their community. Now, the other thing I wanted to say, many clubs, as you said, and we know, have various programs with regard to food and hampers and driving for the Red Cross or whatever, and assisting delivery and so on. And DG Lyle's project this year is childhood obesity. PDG Tony's years ago was diabetes. And I want to also stress here that these special projects don't expire. Non-communicable diseases is still a large part of and a big issue in the Caribbean in particular. And I think we need to understand what I'm trying to get at is the linkages. You're talking about food and so on, but there are linkages going on from that. How we treat the non-communicable diseases, how we create a sense of awareness within our communities of the need to grow their own food for sustainability. How we view the sustainable development goals, which I keep talking about, how we use the grant system in doing bigger and better projects. And all of these things are linkages that we can see, as Stephen talked about. You can't have peace without, settling the business of hunger, right? You can't have sustainability. I'm sort of said multitasking because I'm also looking at the Climate Ambition Summit, which is on now. And again, they're talking about the whole business of climate change, and it affects everything. Okay, so we have to recognize those linkages. They're very important. And the more clubs start to take a broader perspective and not just focus on the minutiae, then we will be able to see the wood from the trees. Right now, we have a project, actually, a global grant that is dealing, part of it is about food security and teaching people how to grow their own kitchen garden. I remember many years ago, former Prime Minister Owen Arthur was and he himself was a keen kitchen gardener, wanted every Barbadian to have their own kitchen garden. Okay, and so these are simple things that you can keep preaching and keep saying to people, look, this is where we are. The world is falling apart in a lot of ways, and if anything, this year has taught us, COVID-19, is we have to think outside of the box, because a year ago, no one would ever have thought that we would be where we are today in terms of we have to meet online, we can't shake hands, we can't do this, country borders are shut, we can't do what we're supposed to do, we may be on lockdown tomorrow, we may not. And so this should hone our minds to thinking broadly, more laterally, and more outside the box. But I commend you, sir, for your talk this afternoon. And I know you've been involved now for a few years because we do it at Zone. You've been in charge, and it's a tremendous effort for what you do in Zone, and a bit of pressure, I know, of packing. What is it, 10,000, right? That you're packing 1,000 in about 4 hours or something like that.
2 hours.
So it's commendable, but as I said, from our point of view, I think we need to start thinking laterally and what are the connections as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your comments, Milton. Excellent as usual. Pertinent as usual. Uplifting as usual.
Okay, enough now.
Okay, well, I'm hoping that, even if we don't have a comment to make immediately, that it has our minds going and activity happening with regard to communicating this further, building on this, saying it differently to how I've said it, perhaps, knowing the people that you have to speak with or who you have to convince, I suppose, with regard to this. But I really also want to leave the message about the fact that, I really feel strongly about us taking a different view of how we approach our Rotary activities, not just year to year, but I don't think you are Rotarian only until 2020 or 2021. Nobody thinks like that. You're a Rotarian, full stop. So that's point number one. Point number two is, as a result of that, it means that we're not just thinking about Dina's here currently or Steve's here next year or the person who comes after. We have to think about as a club, and especially to those who I referred to as the good Rotarians at heart, but not as well informed, that we should be trying to whether it's every week at meeting or whenever it's the opportunity is given to you, to start plugging that developmental ideology message that I feel is really going to be the foundation for a different frame of mind from Rotarians, as against, well, in February we normally do another hamper, and then in March we might feed a family, and in April we help Habitat for Humanity build a house. Sure, those are great things, and you must continue that. But when we're talking about community development, I really feel that we need to start looking differently at that, what I already described, which is, as a collective, trying to help people get from one point to another, and not trying to perpetuate the I have and you never will attitude. That doesn't help our society. It doesn't help our society. I remember once at a golf tournament speech where, well, of course I was giving the speech, right? And it was the prize given and so on. And a guy in the audience who had already had too much to drink said to me, or shouted out while I was actually on the microphone, and he shouted out saying, this Rotary thing, he came to play the golf and he was very happy eating our food and drinking our drinks, but he was, I guess kind of drunk or whatever. And he said, this Rotary thing, what you feel all you're doing when you give these people hampers, or when you go and help them poor people don't have no gratitude. Them poor people they don't understand what you're doing. And as part of my response, because my response was a lot longer, but as part of my response, I said to him, the difference is that the people who are making an effort to uplift their neighbor means that in all manner of ways, and I'll give you some examples, it means that the guy who thought he needed to come to your house and rob you because that's the only option that he thinks that he has in life, you may have done something to help. Yeah. The guy who you thought, or whose only ideology was to do something that was negative or illegal or bad, that you could potentially change in some little way by the projects that you do that are developmental in nature, is the difference with what we are talking about as against doing nothing. Simplistic type of, very simplistic, basic type of explanation, but sometimes it even goes, I think we have a responsibility to additionally explain that same thing that I spoke about before, where we shouldn't be the ones perpetuating the one-off instant gratification thing either. We really have to be doing other things to show that there is thought behind it, and that there is an intent on our part to really try to bring these people out of the position that they are in. That's the only way our society will develop. And you know, Milton, on your point about home gardens and the thing that you're looking at, when you go to, if you've been to Europe, all of those countries from, I mean, practically all, as a matter of fact, it is so common in Hungary, in Croatia, in Slovenia, all those places. It is so common that every single person, their normal way of living, their home has a home garden. They all have home gardens. So how interesting that the Europe that is considered you know, a developed place actually does practice those kind of things, and we, the underdeveloped ones, still talking about it. Interesting, eh? Anyways, so any other questions? Because, sorry, like the DG or like Dolores, I could just continue talking. So I won't. So thank you very much for those of you who attended today. Thank you, Natalie, for your help with the translation. I think you might have had some difficulty because I was speaking a little quickly at times, but I'm hoping that the gist of my message, you have been able to translate properly to the others. And again, just to close, I'm hoping that this message, now that it's fresh in our mind and at the time of year it's being heard as well, will encourage us to share it with our fellow Rotarians in our clubs. And perhaps there'll be a part 2 or a slightly different one in January if I get that chance, like I said, and maybe you could encourage other people to join that one at that time. So thank you very much for today. Thanks, Sean Paddy, for all your help in the background. And of course, this is a recorded session that you could have access to afterwards, as you know. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you soon. Merry Christmas. Sorry, Merry Christmas to all.